In spite of the difficulty of this task, I welcome the chance to provide a glimpse of a historical perspective, possibly informing the conversation around a bishop being relieved of residential responsibilities to perform denominational-wide service. While our corporate memory cannot tell you what is the right decision to make, I hope it will inform that decision and that you may have some interest in the historical memory bringing us up to this moment. I am also realistic about the varying degrees of interest around our history, as well as the fact that it is 3:45 in the afternoon. Each one of us makes decisions about our own lives based on memory and experience. Sometimes we reject or repent of what has been done. Every time I sing Lift Every Voice and Sing, I pay close attention to the verse where it says, "Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us." Or in the third verse, "Out of the gloomy past, till now we stand at last." But there are other times that we embrace our memory and we celebrate the fact that we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses. A personal example. My parents required me to commute to college in order to save dormitory costs. I wanted a different experience for my daughters and told them that they would live at college unless they strenuously protested and wanted to live at home. They did not protest. I hope I can provide some background that will indicate that discussions of leadership and effectiveness and management are not new. I have been drawn to Ecclesiastes as I have listened to the conversation about change. It is not a popular book of the Bible and maybe is too fatalistic or deterministic, but chapter 1, verses 9 to 11 has caught my attention. I don't think these will become popular verses. What has been is what will be, and what has been done is what will be done. There is nothing new under the sun. Is there a thing of which it is said, "See, this is new"? It has already been in the ages before us. The people of long ago are not remembered, nor will there be any remembrance of people yet to come by those who come after them. That may be just a bit too somber for a Florida afternoon or too contrary to all that we have been hearing. Issues of leadership and management have been a part of our life from the beginning. With John Wesley, there wasn't much need to debate because he led and managed and completely controlled the life of the connection. He wouldn't dare take the title of bishop because of the Anglican context of the movement, but he certainly functioned as one, and he ordained persons in 1784 and authorized Coke to ordain when coming to America. In 1789 and 1790, Asbury created what was known as the Council, consisting of bishops and presiding elders whom he alone had appointed, as a way of correcting the cumbersome nature of 11 annual conferences that had no unifying structure. Such a concentration of power was short-lived and ultimately gave rise to the quadrennial general conferences beginning in 1792. The council is a piece of our history that should not be quickly overlooked. The model of episcopacy lived out by Asbury was itinerant and imperial. He traveled and he was in charge. The McKendree model, on the other hand, was a collegial style. Kenneth Rao in a lecture stated, "The new bishop consecrated in 1808, Virginia-born who had been Asbury's assistant in Kentucky, had his own ideas about the nature of the episcopal office and introduced several innovations designed to soften the inherited imperial style. Bishop McKendree insisted on collegiality among bishops. He forced Asbury to share authority and power. For McKendree, the Methodist Episcopal Church would have no one bishop in charge. He delivered the first Episcopal address on the state of the church at the opening of the General Conference 1812, acknowledging his new role and upstaging the aging Asbury, who was not happy at that innovation. McKendry began consultation in appointment making, and he introduced administration by episcopal areas by suggesting to Asbury, you take these conferences and I'll take those. Well, a later bishop wrote, perhaps Bishop Asbury visited more annual conferences than we do, but presiding in an annual conference then was a much lighter task than it is now. We had not a dozen associations whose complicated machinery requires several days to adjust and keep in proper order. Now we have so many things before us at our conferences that it is impossible to do anything well without a longer time than we usually bestow on any one conference. Bishop Andrew, January 1859. Now I can only mention that the Methodist Protestants had no bishops, the British Methodists do not have bishops now, and that we should become more familiar with the Evangelical United Brethren understanding of the Episcopacy and their experience with term episcopacy, but 12 minutes doesn't allow any more in-depth around those parts of our history. 1964, the Coordinating Council, which no longer exists, brought a report about the General Superintendency to the 1964 General Conference, which included legislation that permitted a one-year church-wide assignment and included a suggestion that the Council of Bishops might give sincere consideration to a full-time executive officer. So we're not dealing with a new thought. In 1968, there were efforts to relieve the Secretary of the Council of Bishops from residential duties. And the Council of Bishops took to the General Conference a petition in the form of a constitutional amendment. It was sent on to the annual conferences for action first, where it failed to receive the 2/3 vote. This was at a time when the Secretary of the Council served a 4-year term, as is still the case, and the President, however, served a 1-year term. The Secretary served as the ecumenical entry point and was considered head of communion for ecumenical issues. Strong secretaries in that era included Bromley Oxnam, Roy Short, and James Matthews. What I found more interesting from that time were 2 addresses at the November 1967 meeting of the Council of Bishops as it looked forward to the union with the EUB Church. The point is that 45 years later, the comments sound so current and familiar. W. Kenneth Goodson gave an address entitled, What Leadership Can the United Church Expect from the Episcopacy? He enumerated 5 criticisms of the council. And to all of my bishop friends here, these are not my criticisms, they're Kenneth Goodson's in 1968. 1, that the Council of Bishops does not take sufficiently aggressive lead in the affairs of the church as a whole. 2, that it does not do a sufficiently effective promotional job. 3, that it does not move in effectively with reference to situations obtaining in society in general. 4, that it does not speak to the church often enough or with sufficient clarity and effectiveness on current concerns of the church and of society. 5, that it has not found ways and means to administer unitedly the total church, which is to say that it does not move in as a council on the particular affairs of episcopal areas. Each bishop and episcopal area are remaining largely units unto themselves. And he laid out the need for a set-aside bishop. On the other hand, Bishop Fred Hollowell delivered a paper on what is the future role of the bishop. The one sentence that caught my eye was, I must say that I believe that we should give more attention to our own areas and less to the idea of general superintendents. And so the debate went on. 1972 to 76, there was a study committee on the episcopacy and superintendency, but I found there little that was worth including in this very brief survey of our history. in no way undercutting the value of reading those long and detailed reports. 1988 to 89, Council President Jack Toole appointed a committee to study and make recommendations on council leadership structure, and they called for a set-aside presiding bishop of the church, not to take the secretary of the council, but the president of the council. The report was not approved by the council. 2001 to 2003, it was dealt with again, essentially calling for the 2004 General Conference to put in the appropriate legislation that a bishop could be set aside for 4 years, and also having the necessary constitutional amendment. It had strong support in the Legislative Committee and seemed to have strong support on the floor of General Conference until the General Secretary of the General Council on Finance and Administration raised financial concerns, and the motion to refer was adopted by a small margin, and so it was referred to somewhere. You don't know how much I appreciate that you can still find humor in all this. History does not prescribe a particular course of action, but that does not diminish its importance. Each of you must decide if the needs of the church today call for one bishop to be in a role not yet experienced in the church. Just because it hasn't been done doesn't mean it shouldn't be done. Just because it hasn't been done doesn't mean it should be done. It is up to others to anticipate what may be the benefits or the unintended consequences of this change. All that can be said from our heritage is that it is a departure from the practice that developed after Wesley and after Asbury, and largely through the influence of William McKendry. I'm quite sure that a set-aside bishop will not pretend to be either a Wesley or an Asbury in our midst. Strong leaders have emerged without this office existing. Bishops such as Otterbein and Seibert, Simpson and Haven, McConnell, Clare, A.P. Shaw, Oxnam, Corson, Matthews, Escher, and Debs. Kenneth Arrow said in a lecture, "We Methodists need not at all be ashamed in confessing our grateful pride in our Methodist heritage. But it is just this pride and gratitude that should prompt us to strike for an equally open and hopeful future. We may be about to do a new thing, or it may be only the latest expression of seeking inspirational leadership, a compelling vision, and effective management so that Jesus Christ will be made known and the love of God and love of neighbor will increase in the world." I resonate to the poetry of Natalie Sleeth. From the past will come the future, what it holds a mystery, unrevealed until its season, something God alone can see.